Hello and welcome to Esri Australia's screen share video tutorial on how to use Collector for ArcGIS. Collector for ArcGIS is a mobile data collection app that allows anybody in the field to capture accurate data and return it to the office, or in this case the classroom, for further use. Field workers use web maps on mobile devices to capture and edit their data, and Collector for ArcGIS works even when disconnected from the internet, which I know is a huge plus for schools. The next time your device is connected to the internet, the collected data will automatically transfer to your ArcGIS map. It is free to download and can be downloaded onto a personal phone device or tablet. All you need is your ArcGIS login credentials. Before being able to use the Collector for ArcGIS app, we first need to create our feature layers and our maps so that our application is ready to go. So upon logging into ArcGIS Online, you need to go to Content. And when content loads, we will be creating a new item, which you can find in the top left corner here. I'm going to click Create, and we're going to choose Feature Layer. And from here, we're going to choose, there are a lot of options, but we're going to choose Build a Layer, and we're going to select Points, Lines, and Polygons. And we're going to click Create. Now before we move on, we're going to rename these. So for today's training video, we're going to look at creating a form that will allow us to capture data in a park. So for point layer, we're going to call this amenities. For line layer, we're going to call that paths. And for polygon layer, we might call this fields and courts. I'm going to click out of it and then click next. Now this is asking us to set our map extent. So if we know that we were working in a really local area like Brisbane, I might zoom right in on Brisbane and even closer if I was only interested in public parks in Brisbane. If I wanted my map to be accessible to anybody who wanted to add data in parks, so that we kind of had a bit of a national information database for parks, then I might set the map extent to all of Australia. And then when you're happy with your map extent, you're going to click Next. And it will prompt you to add a title and some tags and a summary if you will. And I'm going to call this Services in Public Parks. And I'm just going to write in brackets ArcGIS Collector Training. And you can add additional tags if you wish, maybe something like public parks, and hit enter every time you want to add a new tag, and you can enter a summary if you will. For now I'm not going to, and I'm going to click done. And it will take us to that items page. So we've essentially begun to create our new feature. The next step to adding to our feature layer is to add fields to it. So we need to go from here to our data tab, and we need to select fields because we need to add additional fields. And we want to make sure that the layer that we want to add fields to has been selected. So we have 3 layers that we've added. We're going to start with amenities, and we're going to click on add, and we're going to add, we're going to call this asset type, and you'll notice that there are no spaces in this one. There can be no spaces in the field name. You can get around this if you want by putting an underscore in, if that is more up your alley. I'm going to leave it without a space, but that doesn't matter necessarily because our display name is what our viewers and our data collectors will see. So here I'm going to call this type of amenity, and I want to change it from string type to an integer, and we're going to accept the other 2 default values at the moment and hit add new field. And it'll save that and update the page, and if we scroll down we can see that our new field has been added in here. We're going to click on type of amenity, and we're going to start creating a bit of a list. So we can create a list, and we're going to start with, we're not going to go all out today, but we're going to go with water bubbler, and we're going to give that a value of 0. I'm going to add, and I'm going to add a picnic table. I'm going to give that a code of 1, a value of 1, And let's add one more. I'm going to add a restrooms, and I'm going to give that a value of 2. Now you can theoretically, if you want to, feel free to, you can go and add more features. For example, you might want to add bins, barbecue facilities, lights, like path lights for nighttime security. You can add as many amenities as you want. I'm going to stick with these 3 today, and I'm going to click save. And that'll update. And I'm going to cross out of here, and I'm going to add one more field whilst I'm in amenities, and I'm going to call this one notes. And as notes is one word, I'm just going to replicate that here, and I want to keep the type as string, and the length is 256. That means that people entering data can enter 256 characters about that particular feature. So if someone was added a restroom, they might want to add notes about that restroom, mentioning that it was clean and well kept. And then we're going to click add new field. And we don't need to go into that field and make any changes like we did for the type of amenity. That one's good to go as it is. Now, you may decide that you want to go and do the same for paths. Add, we're going to call this one paths. As it's one word, I'm just going to replicate that. You would need to choose integer again, accept the other default fields, and add new. And you can click on that and create a list. And we might want to go, well, there are walking paths, give it a value. There are bike paths, give it a value. And sometimes there are trails, depending on the type of park you're in. You can give it a value, and you can click save. And again, the update was successful. And I again could choose to go back in and add a notes with a string type, so that people can make notes about those paths too. Perhaps about the state of the path, whether there's any hazards on it, etc. And I could go and do the same again for fields and courts. For the sake of time, I'm not going to, but you could add, you could differentiate between the types of fields and courts. You might say that there's a general grass area in parks. You might decide to map netball courts or basketball courts or soccer and football fields, or even dog off-leash areas as well. So we're not going to do that for the sake of time in this training video, but you can do it as needed for your layers. And then we're going to go back to the Overview tab, and you might decide that, hey, you would like to disable or enable attachments. So I'm just going to turn these on, because I want, I'm turning them off at the moment. Disabling attachments will permanently remove any existing attachments. So if I want my my field workers to be able to add photos, take photos and store them against a point, a line or a polygon area, I might wish to actually enable those attachments. So that depends on what your goals are and what your objectives are with collecting data. So I'm going to enable them all at the moment. They're all on. And our next step is to open this into a map and configure our map. Now that we've successfully configured our feature layer, it's time to open it in a map and configure our map. So we need to go to Open in Map Viewer, and we want to click on the drop down and hit Add New Map. Add to New Map, sorry. That will load a new ArcGIS Online map, which is something we're familiar with. And it will load in just a second our 3 layers to the side here. It might just take a moment to load. And there they are. So we've got our amenities, our paths, and our fields and courts. And it's included the whole name, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this More Options button, and I'm going to rename those 3 so that they read a lot more simply, and so that our app, when we go to use this form in our app, it's a lot cleaner. It doesn't feel as cluttered. So nice and simple names is best for entering data into ArcGIS Collector. And one more, last one is fields and courts. I'm going to hit OK. Now, currently there's no data on our map because we haven't yet used ArcGIS for collector. We've got a couple more steps to get through before we're ready to go down to the park and test our app out. Our first step is we need to change our styles. So we're going to click change style and for amenities, sorry. So in case you missed that, amenities, we're going to hover over it and we're going to click the change style icon. And we're going to select the field we added before, type of amenity. And for select a drawing style, we want to select this first one, types, unique symbols, and we want to click on the options button. And we're actually going to configure these symbols so that they reflect kind of what we're mapping. So we're going to click on picnic table. I like to just click on the little red dot, and I'm going to click on shape. And you want to make sure that you're, for this exercise anyway, that you're in the government drop down tab. And we're going to search for something that resembles a picnic table and these little icons. I'm fairly sure it's about halfway down, maybe a little bit further. Something like this. We can see a little picnic table with the tree over the top. We're going to select that, and right now it's pretty small. Up the top we can see the size that it would appear. It's pretty small, so we're actually going to change that size and make it a little bit larger, 25, and hit OK. We're going to do the same for restroom, and in a second water bubbler. And restroom will be in the same place, government, and from memory I think it's further down the bottom. Maybe I'm wrong. This is the trickiest part sometimes, just locating the symbol that you are after. Again, symbols in maps are just as important because they need to be quickly identifiable to whoever's viewing your map, whoever's looking at it. And we'll see if we can find this. I am seemingly lost at the moment, but I know it is in here. There it is. We're going to click on that. Again, we're going to make it bigger, 25, hit OK, and then the last one we're going to add a symbol for a water bubbler. And we're just going to add a simple water feature. So there's a bit of a recycle feature, and we'll look for the blue because blue represents water a lot of the time. There we are. And again, making it size 25 or whatever size suits you. We're happy with that, so we're going to hit OK. And we're going to click done to lock it all in. And we're going to go up to this edit button here. And we're going to go down. We can see that our symbols have been updated. We're going to click on manage. And we're going to make sure that these changes are saved. So we want to click save changes. And that will save, whilst the feature layer exists that we created, we want to save it as we update it too. If we go back to details, we can do the same with paths. By going to change style, we need to select our new feature, our new field, paths, and we want to select this first one again, types, unique symbols, and click on options. Now, I'm quite happy with these three colors, but if you wanted to change the colors of your paths, you could click on it again, and you could click a color for your path, and then hit OK, which is down the bottom. There it is, and it would lock it in. I'm going to leave those three as they are, and I'm going to click OK again and click done to lock it in. Now for the training video, I didn't go and create a new field for fields and courts, but if you did, you may wish to configure the colors associated with those different fields. For example, if you've got a generic grass field, well, it would make sense that that probably is represented by the color green. Whereas something like a concrete basketball court, you might wish to show that as a gray. And again, you would go to edit, you'd go to manage, and you'd make sure that you've saved any changes that you've updated. Now before we exit this map, we have one more job to do. We need to make sure we actually save our map. So it's a new map. These services that we've just added in, these three feature layers here, are not a part of the map. They're a separate feature layer that we've created. So we also need to create and save a map so that we have the map to work on. So we're going to click Save As, and again, name it something intuitive. I'm going to go Services in Public Parks map. Just something easy to identify, and again you're going to need to enter at least one tag and a summary if you want. You're going to click Save Map. Now if you were a teacher and you are designing this for your class, you would need to remember to make sure that you go and share this with your organization, or if you've created a Year 7 class for example, you would need to choose the group you want to save it with. And I'm just going to back out of this and show you that little pop-up that just occurred. This is the pop-up. So if I change the sharing settings of this map, I also need to make sure I change the sharing settings of my feature layer that I created. So you would need to update that sharing too. Everything needs to have the same sharing level. So now we've created our feature layer and we've created a map. We are nearly good to go. The last thing I want to show you just before we do leave is I want to go to my content and just show you what those two features, features that we just created look like in our content sitting there. So we can see that this is our feature layer here. This is the amenities, the paths, and the fields and courts layer that we just created. And this is the new map that we created that these layers are going to sit within. So it's important that you have both of these things before you can use Collector for ArcGIS. And if you were wanting to make it available to students, you would need to change the sharing level to reflect that, making sure that they match too. Now we're ready to download Collector for ArcGIS onto our personal device. So we're going to click App Store, type in Collector for ArcGIS as seen in the search bar, and it comes up with the first option, Collector for ArcGIS. Now as I've already downloaded it, my option is to open it, but you will need to first download it. Make sure not to choose the ad at the top. Then all you need to do is log in with your normal ArcGIS credentials by clicking Sign in with ArcGIS Online. Now after logging in with our ArcGIS credentials, we'll be presented with the maps available for us to access. We're going to click on the one we were just working on, Services in Public Parks, and it will bring up our map. And you'll notice that the GPS accuracy at the moment is just changing, and that to use the app we need to actually be below 9 meters in accuracy. So if you're working in a built-up area like a city, large concrete and steel structures are likely to impact on your GPS accuracy. As we're working in parks, it shouldn't be too much of a factor, but it's something to keep in mind. Now for today's exercise, I'm not going to bother actually going down to the park, but if this was being done for assessment purposes, then it's important to note that accurate data is important, so the accurate collection of data is important, and that going down to the fields themselves or to the parks themselves would be integral to that accurate collection of data. So I'm going to press plus, and today I'm going to just pan over to the park, and I'm going to, once I'm happy with the location, the pinpoint, I'm going to click water bubbler, and the water bubbler icon maps to that particular point. Now before hitting submit in the top right corner, I'm going to add some notes about that water bubbler. Today I might say that there are 4 bubblers here and a dog trough, which might be useful for families or somebody else entering the area or wanting to use the park or wanting to know about the park. And I'm going to click submit. It might take a moment, but it submits that point and locks it in. Let's say I want to add another point, and again I'm going to pan over here this time, and I'm going to add a restroom in. And before I do, I'm going to click on notes, and I'm going to say this is a unisex bathroom, and click done. And you'll notice before I hit submit that there's the option to take a photo or attach an image, and that's because we enabled that before. If we disabled that, then that option wouldn't be there. But it might be that your data collector takes a photo of the front door with the unisex symbol on it and attaches it to that point, which is a really great feature of ArcGIS Collector. And once they're happy with it, you're going to click submit again. So adding points is really that simple. If we were to add a line, for example, a path, we're going to just scroll up on here, and we're going to choose walking paths. Oh, and I've made a little bit of an error, so I'm going to cancel that, and I'm going to start again. And before I select the path, I'm going to select my starting point, so I'm happy with around here, and I'm going to scroll up and choose walking paths. And you'll notice that if you were walking, then and your GPS accuracy was closer to 0, meaning it's more accurate, then every time the path changes direction, you would need to click Add Point to show that there's a vertex in that path. And as you walk and as you change direction again, you would click Add Point, and you would follow that process each time it's changing direction. The path's actually going to go right by the restrooms and continue through. You can see that there's a bit of a smart feature here as well, and I'm going to hit Add Point. It's going to go out to that road. And once I'm happy with it, it's important that if I moved it around, you notice that the path is looking for the next point. It doesn't matter as long as I don't click that next point. So it's important, don't click the next point if you're finished. You want to hit Submit instead, and it will submit that too. And it tells you the length of that path, 632 meters. Now, if at any stage I made an error, I can click on that feature. So I'm going to click on the amenities feature, the water bubblers, and I could scroll up and I could edit that, or I could delete it if I wanted to. There are also other options attached to it, like directions and copy. So there is that to keep in mind. If I recorded that point earlier and I wanted to add a picture, I can always go back and click Edit and take photo. I'm not going to do that today. So I'm going to click Submit again, and it's as simple as that. Now, if I click Add again and move back over here, you'll notice that before we didn't set our new fields for fields and courts, but if you did go ahead and do that, fantastic. You can click on that and click New Feature, and it won't map for me, but I can show you the process. It's very similar to adding a path. So I might go and walk around the perimeter of a field, and each time there's a vertex or a change in direction, I just need to add a point, very similar to the process for adding a line, and when I'm happy with that shape, I would hit Submit. But again, it's important that you would go and configure that into the map and the feature layer when you were first creating it. And it's as simple as that. If I scroll out a bit, I can see that those feature layers are now mapped to that. And we're going to return to ArcGIS Online to see that this app has spoken to the online program and that it's uploaded that data for us. Once you've finished collecting your data and have returned from the field, you can log back into ArcGIS Online, locate in your folders where you've saved your services in Public Parks map, and be ready to access it. But before you do, if you were collecting data in the field and didn't have an internet connection, you might need to wait an additional amount of time so that your device can transfer that data to ArcGIS Online once it's had its internet connection re-established. But once it has, we can click on the Service in Public Parks map, which will take us to the Items page. From the Item page, we simply just want to open in Map Viewer, and it will take us to an ArcGIS Online map. And it might take a moment to load down the side in our Contents pane, but after a small amount of time, we will see our feature layers appear here. And there they are, and we can see them on the map here. And at the moment we can only see one because we're working at a very local scale. But if I was to go and visit that park, I know that it's in Cooperoo, we can see that right here, these park features that we've entered into ArcGIS Collector have uploaded onto ArcGIS Online, and that, hey, there are options for attachments if we have taken photos. This line, again, the walking paths, we've got our restroom, and we can see that the notes have been attached to the unisex bathroom, and our water bubblers, 4 bubblers and a dog trough. So we can see all of our data there, and depending on your goals and objectives from here, you can begin to manipulate this data, perhaps perform some analysis too. That brings us to a conclusion of this video tutorial. We hope it's been helpful, and if you have any feedback, we'd love to hear it. Thanks for your time.